name is Dr. Thabit Ahmed, and has completed his education from St. John's Medical College and MD MD in General Medicine from Bangalore Medical College, and done his DNB in Cardiology from Narayana Rudralaya in Bangalore, and currently is working as a consultant cardiologist in Bangalore Baptist Hospital. And he has also also worked as an assistant professor in MVJ Medical College, and also worked as an interventional cardiologist in Bangalore, this Manipal Hospital in Bangalore. And also taken challenges like done complex and simple coronary angioplasties, dual chamber pacemakers, and lot many things. So let us start with the introduction of the talk. The coronavirus disease of 2019, that is COVID-19, caused by the severe acute respiratory syndrome, that is coronavirus 2, the SARS coronavirus, first appeared in Wuhan, China. It was officially declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization in March 2020. As of July 2021, the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in over 3 crore 16 lakhs and 12,794 cases so far, and 4 lakhs 23,842 deaths till date. And here are few post-COVID complications. And the complications are pulmonary fibrosis, pulmonary embolism, and acute kidney injury, coagulopathy, DIC, that is disseminated intravascular coagulopathy, and also cardiovascular diseases, peripheral vascular diseases, and deep vein thrombosis. As our topic of interest is cardiovascular diseases, we'll be talking on cardiovascular diseases, that is post-COVID cardiovascular complications. While much of the focus has been on pulmonary complications, it is important for emergency clinicians to be aware of cardiovascular complications as well, which has been a significant contributor to the mortality associated with this disease. The cardiovascular complications like as persistent symptoms may include palpitations, dyspnea, chest pain, and if it is a long-term, that is a chronic term sequence, then may include increased cardiometabolic demand, myocardial fibrosis or scarring, and arrhythmias, tachycardia, and autonomic dysfunction. The patients with cardiovascular complications during acute infection or those experiencing persistent cardiac symptoms may be monitored with serial clinical investigations like echocardiogram and electrocardiograph follow-ups. Here are few risks and the complications with COVID plus the cardiac complications. And the risks are, and especially they are geriatrics, and they are old age, and comorbidities like cardiovascular diseases, pulmonary diseases, and renal disease, that is CKD, and diabetic. Also like systemic inflammation, coagulation abnormalities, and severe illness and multi-organ dysfunction and immobility. There are few complications with COVID-19 and cardiac comorbidities. So myocardial injury and myocarditis, and we can also see acute myocardial infarction and heart failure and cardiomyopathy, arrhythmias, shock and cardiac arrest, venous thromboembolic events. And here is a graph representing the timeline of post-acute COVID-19. Usually, the acute COVID-19 lasts for 4 weeks on onset of symptoms. Here we can see the detection unlikely, PCR positive, and it lasts for 4 weeks. And after that, when the patient is PCR negative, and we can see a drastic change in their lifestyle, like the patient will be fatigued, decline in the quality of life, and also patient will also feel muscular weakness and severe joint pains. Related to the pulmonary, the patient will also undergo dyspnea, cough, and persistent requirement of the oxygen. If it is related to the CNS, the patient is like anxiety all the time, into deep depression and sleep disturbances, and PTSD, though, that is post traumatic stress disorders, and cognitive disturbances like brain fog and headaches. And coming to cardiac comorbidities like palpitations and chest pain, thromboembolism in arteries and veins, and also it is seen in chronic kidney diseases, and hair loss is also seen. This can be seen for 12 weeks to 6 months past COVID. Now we'll see the pathophysiology in detail. The SARS coronavirus 2 is an enveloped, non-segmented, single-stranded positive sense RNA virus. An angiotensin converting enzyme 2, that is ACE2, is a protein found on the surface of the lung alveolar epithelial cells and enterocytes of the small intestine, which has been proposed as an entry for site for SARS coronavirus 2. As ACE2 breaks down the angiotensin 2, which is a pro-inflammatory factor in the lungs, inhibition of ACE2 in ACE2 receptors may be another factor in lung injury, as well as the cause of systemic inflammation with cytokine release that can result in acute respiratory distress syndrome, that is ARDS, and multi-organ dysfunction. The proposed pathophysiology mechanisms of myocardial impairment includes invasion of SARS coronavirus 2 virus via angiotensin converting enzyme 2 to cardiovascular cells or tissues, which leads to endothelial inflammation and dysfunction. The destabilization of vulnerable atherosclerotic plaques, stent thrombosis, cardiac stress due to diminishing oxygen supply to cardiac muscles that damages, and myocardial infarction. Here is the image representing the pathophysiology. Here you can clearly see the SARS coronavirus 2. It is attaching to the ACE2 receptors, which is present on the lungs, surface of the lungs. And if this SARS is attaching to this receptors, that enhances the activation of T cells, macrophages, infiltration, and interferons, which then leads to a cytokine storm, which leads to lung inflammation, pneumonia, and sepsis. Then again, there is a cytokine storm which is affecting to the cardiac muscles. Then it can lead to hypertension, and the mechanism what happens in the cardiac muscles is it can we can also see vasoconstriction, vasodilation, and that enhances it can result to myocarditis, myocardial infarction, heart failure, heart attack, and arrhythmias. COVID patients with pre-existing cardiovascular diseases have an increased risk of worsening cardiac conditions and higher mortality rates. Since the patients who are already having cardiac complications, and those who are affected with coronavirus than being with cardiac complications, and the risk is the mortality risk is high. Now we'll see the genetic and gender impact. While the ACE is the slide displayed? Yeah. While the ACE2 genes are located on the X chromosome, gender has an impact of COVID-19 patients, where men are the increased risk of susceptibility to COVID-19 infections and CVD complications due to their homologous allele for ACE2 compared to heterozygous allele in females. Interestingly, clinical data from 1,485 European men and 537 women were affected with heart failure and showed elevated in circulating plasma ACE2 receptors in men than in female. This data complements with the observation and increased prevalence of susceptibility of COVID-19 in males than females, and demonstrates that the abundance of ACE2 receptors in cardiovascular cells can lead to severe clinical complications. Coming to the mortality, according to the death data of CDC, that is Center of Disease Control, as of July 2021, the cardiovascular conditions such as hypertension disease is 1,17,150, ischemic heart diseases, hypertensive diseases, and ischemic heart diseases are 65,171, and 72,197 are cardiac arrests, and 44,503 are cardiac arrhythmias, 45,788 are heart failures, where very few conditions contributing to deaths where with COVID-19 was listed to the death certificates. Here are few medications, COVID medications and cardiovascular system. Many of the newly studied medication interacts extensively with other cardiovascular drugs, including hypertensive, antihypertensives, antiarrhythmics, anticoagulants, antiplatelets, and statins. Means the patients who are already on cardiac medications and then found positive for COVID-19, then they started with COVID-19 medications, and the medications which we are taking with for cardiac complications, they have an extreme interaction between the cardiac medications and the COVID medications. So here are a few examples of the medications. Here the injection, here the screen displayed, the injection remdesivir, which is given for nucleotide analog with inhibition of RNA, may cause hypotension and it can cause arrhythmia. Injection ribavirin given for inhibition of RNA and DNA virus replication, which this has an interaction with anticoagulants and may cause severe hemolytic anemia as well. The injection lopinavir, ritonavir inhibits the proteases. Ritonavir inhibits CYP3A metabolism. This interacts with anticoagulants, antiplatelets, and statins, and also antiarrhythmics. And injection favipiravir inhibits the DNA and RNA polymerases. This has an interaction with statins, antiarrhythmics, which may cause severe hemolytic reaction. And also these drugs, chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine. This interacts with antiarrhythmics, may cause direct myocardial toxicity and worsen cardiomyopathy. And the drug azithromycin is an interferes with protein synthesis of and binds to 50S ribosomes, interacts with an anticoagulants, statins, antiarrhythmics, other QT prolonging agents. And also the interferon, which is given for immune system activation, may cause direct myocardial toxicity and it can worsen as well. The drug methylprednisolone reduces the inflammation, interacts with anticoagulants, may cause fluid retention, hypertension, electrolyte changes. And the drug tocilizumab inhibits inhibition of B6, IL-6, the interleukin 6, may increase the medication metabolism such as statins and may cause hypertension. Here is a case, a live case, which will be discussed by Dr. Thabit Ahmed, sir.
So this was a very detailed presentation from Dr. Irfan. Thank you for that. And COVID is the COVID infection, the viral infection. It's multi-system involvement, not just pulmonary respiratory distress syndrome. So as nicely delineated by Dr. Irfan, cardiac complications are extremely important. And our COVID patients who are having cardiac complications do not do well uniformly, almost uniformly, especially with myocarditis, cardiogenic shock, and sometimes with sepsis and Takotsubo cardiomyopathy or stress cardiomyopathy that we see. And along with the prothrombotic state that occurs because of this particular infection, occurrences of pulmonary embolism, arterial thrombosis, venous thrombosis have been reported, and we have seen in our own practice over here. And we've also seen, I have seen a young person who's come with a significant submassive pulmonary embolism with a clot sitting in his right side right ventricle. And his RT-PCR was negative, but his COVID IgG antibody was positive. Similarly, there's another patient in our ward in the Wing 5 for our interns who are coming to our hospital can see. So she has come with an aortic thrombotic occlusion, middle aortic, major vessel, and lower limb almost going into ischemia, but then recovered. She's also got IgG COVID antibody positive. So just going through the reports also as we were discussing this presentation. So it's a very significant thing, and the complications and the evidence, the data is still evolving, both related to COVID infection and post-COVID vaccinations. What is happening? So it's a very wide spectrum of knowledge that is evolving. So one of our emergency residents actually had said that now we should not just say non-coronary diabetes and hypertension. Post-COVID itself is a biggest risk factor in our patients who come to us, because that also has a continuing pathology of thrombogenicity, maybe some atherosclerosis and pro-inflammatory state and hyperactivated interleukin system, and as Dr. Irfan said about ACE angiotensin converting enzyme upregulation with selective ACE2 receptor activation in the cardiovascular system. So we had a 60-year-old lady who came to us a few weeks back. She came basically with a few non-specific complaints of generalized fatigue, not able to eat food. Actually, she was under treatment in another hospital for moderate to severe COVID infection, requiring some oxygen support. She recovered from that, was okay on atmospheric oxygen, but subsequently, unfortunately, she developed what we call as the black fungus or the mucormycosis. That was a nasocidal mucormycosis. So she underwent an endoscopic evacuation. This is all from another hospital, and given on parenteral antifungal, and then followed by oral antifungal, that is posaconazole. Parenteral was amphotericin B. So you all must be knowing about liposomal amphotericin B versus non-liposomal amphotericin B, the differences between the two, and what are the advantages of liposomal amphotericin B, although a little more costlier. So after that, she was put on oral posaconazole, and she presented to us with that. Our emergency resistance did an ECG. It showed an anterior wall MI almost evolving. So, and the echocardiogram initially also showed diminished LV ejection fraction. So after some counseling, although the patient that is a little apprehensive, there's a triple assault on the same patient, starting from COVID infection to mucor and then an anterior wall MI. There's a myocardial infarction. So she was taken for an angiogram. There was critical LAD lesion. We stented it. There was some post-operative pulmonary edema and some respiratory distress, and she did have some desaturation. We had to shift her to the another ICU in our hospital and then given some oxygen support. She also developed esophageal candidiasis. Now, there is a white fungus. So she also had esophageal candidiasis and severe retching and vomiting. So it was all managed, and then finally she came down to some 1.5 liter of oxygen per minute, and she got discharged just around a few days back. There was almost a 3.5 weeks of hospital stay. This current hospital stay, all in all, she had almost 2.5 to 3 months of hospital stay across various hospitals with all of these problems. So this is a good case that he picked up, Dr. Irfan, because this was a protracted problem, having multiple issues right from pulmonary nasosynal sinus mucormycosis, and an anterior wall MI. So it is a good example of the spectrum of involvement of COVID infection. We also are having some bradycardia, that is heart rates going low with COVID infections, like 2:1 AV block. It's not very common, though rare, but they are recovering. Not much action being taken on that. So these are all the multimodal presentations of immediate post-COVID. But delayed post-COVID, what do we expect to see is another big question. We are almost going into 2 years of this COVID times right now. So there are onslaught of waves, wave one, wave two, wave three, God knows how many more. And the consequences of the acute infections, during the acute infections as well delineated by Dr. Irfan, the multi-system inflammation, shock, acute kidney injury, vascular complications, cardiomyopathy, myocarditis, ischemic, non-ischemic. So all of these multiple concerns in the acute hospital stay and post-discharge, and the delayed effects that we could see or we may expect to see, including peripheral arterial thrombosis. And one of your students or intern has tried to start doing a retrospective, prospective data collection on cardiac complications of COVID infection. So that will be also interesting to see. I'm sure we are also having enough and more world over data. It started off with an Italian study where they did MRI on post-COVID or pre-COVID infections patients, cardiac MRI, which showed almost 70 to 80% of COVID, post-COVID infected patients having cardiac fibrosis to variable extents. So even if patients do not present to us with overt clinical manifestations, we can safely presume and say there are subclinical which we may not be able to identify, multi-system involvement of this particular infection, and it is having a long-standing impact. The amplitude of that we are yet to really feel or palpate. Over the coming months or years, we'll probably have more and more knowledge about this particular infection and the impacts of it. Thank you, and I will hand over to Dr. Irfan, and if possible, to conclude the session. And if there are any discussions from the attendees, appreciate that. There will be some very enthusiastic attendees also, but try to limit it. So weekend, we're going into a Saturday, hopefully a uneventful Sunday. So conclusion from Irfan, and if any comments and from the team from your college also, if he's around, and professor also is there. So anybody having any closing comments, please proceed, and I'll mute my mic for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So any of one have any doubts can discuss now. So
If you have any specific questions, you can ask.
nobody is having any questions, sir. Thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome, Irfan. And any closing statements from you, and then we can conclude if. And if Dr. Balakeshava wants to put in any closing notes, please.
So this is the post-COVID complications. I think cardiac complications very quite commonly is talk of the town now, because lot of people have we have seen that even you mentioned about the study where so much of complications, and you mentioned about exact mechanisms of causing this the cardiac complications. I think Tabit sir has got a lot of experience, and thank you, sir. And I have to thank you much for our allowing our students to do a study on these things, and they always appreciate your cooperation, and always they are much benefited of your input. Thank you, sir, for coming this webinar and giving us a lot of information on the COVID complications, especially cardiac complications.
Thank you,
Anything
sir.
that
And the enthusiasm from your students is very encouraging, and I really appreciate that. I'm not sure if all the doctors across the hospital would be appreciating, but then enthusiasm and asking queries about polypharmacies and appropriateness, so that we also are gone into thinking the use and the need for clinical pharmacists in every healthcare is extremely important, because there are more than one group of doctors treating the same patient. So polypharmacy without the analysis, what happens is every doctor will come and give added prescriptions, and one or two of such expertise having an analysis of the doctor-doctor interactions, appropriateness, and some kind of a feedback is extremely important. It is very important. In fact, the regulations from the government regarding the need for this particular position in all hospitals. So I appreciate the enthusiasm from your students, sir, and I look forward to more and more.
Like, because now the clinical pharmacist, even the few regulatory authorities, NABH, are making mandatory. I think it's going to be very much helpful, and especially healthcare professionals like you, if you support us, definitely, I think
no, we are all here to support, and
the Western kind of culture.
I mean, it's the right thing. Whatever is right anywhere is right everywhere. So we have to apply it. So that is good. Thank you. And if
Any comments, Sheikh, or any others?
No, sir, from my side, there is no comment, sir, so far.
we'll have a concluding
Okay,
statement. So thank you for attending
webinar.
this
Thank you, sir, once again for all your time and
thank you.
giving us so much of information on the COVID comp.
Thank you. So let's conclude. Thank you, Irfan. Thank you, sir. Bye bye. Thank you all.
Thank you.